I'm so delighted to have the chance to put you on tape, William, my good friend. This is your 80th birthday year.
Yes, it is, yes.
And I think it's marvelous to have a little souvenir of all your experiences and your reflections on those experiences. Professor William-Olsson is one of the most famous of Swedish geographers and very much loved in the international community. You are.
Yes.
Today will be a little free-floating, but I'd like you to begin with your childhood, just as you were explaining.
My childhood, yes. Yes. I understand that you want to come to the roots of personal development, and then I must begin with my childhood, because I was born with club feet, and at that time they didn't know how to cure it, except my father, who was a businessman, who said it must be cured. And so when I was 3 years of age, I was operated on the table in my nursery by Stockholm's best, one of Stockholm's best doctors, yes, and he cured this what you call it,
disability.
Disability. Well, he was very skilled. And I was operated on. My mother was the anesthetist, and it's a peculiar incidents from our point of view. But I was cured. But that childhood, the very early childhood, brought to me a feeling of, at heart, being not much worth. I was a cripple, and I couldn't move much, so I was fat. I was like a football or something like that. No, yes, and then I was cured, and became normal, a normal child, but I had as a basic foundation in my general belief in people and possibilities. Anything is possible if you try, and anything is possible. And I had met so much love and care when I was a child that to me, everybody was a good person, a nice person. Yes, that's my first childhood. Then after that, but I never believed in myself. I guess most children who are able, they learn to believe in themselves. I didn't do that, and to that this came that I had a definite another drawback. I was what we call ordblind, that is a dyslexia. So I learned to write and read, but I read very slowly, and I could never learn to spell, and I was always happy. And yes, I still have difficulties to write, and so my childhood. That's my home milieu. So when I was 10 years of age, I was sent to a boarding school in Värmland.
This is the Lundsberg School.
Pardon?
The Lundsberg.
Lundsberg School, yes, exactly, Lundsberg School. My father had founded it on my mother's birth
Place.
Place, yes. And it was then, when I was 10 years old, it became a famous Swedish school, and the princes of the royal family entered the school, and we were considered to be, for several decades, when the movements, radical movements broke through, we were considered to be almost yes, yeah, it was the class difference, but at Lundsberg we were never spoilt in any way, not in any way. It was a very very strict and from many points of view, a lovely place, and it is now owned by the former pupils, and they are running it with a state aid, as long as they are allowed to in our with a political development in Sweden. But that's another thing.
Yes,
yes, that was. But the teaching there was very much like ordinary Swedish and German schools, strict subjects and very strict control. You had to work, and at Lundsberg we had, if I look back on my working that day there, it was fantastic what we had to do and what we did too. But I hated that way of working, because it didn't fit me at all. No. And then I was in opposition to, so I felt unhappy with that kind of work. But at the same time, I knew that my father had started the school. He was never a teacher, and he was a businessman. So he didn't, but I knew that schools had to be reformed. I knew that from the beginning, and already at 16 and 7 years of age, 16 and 17 years of age, I took contact with modern movements in pedagogics, in Switzerland, and above all in England. And there I got in contact with the New Education Fellowship, which was very little known in Sweden, but and that proved to be a very happy, a very good experiences I got. I'm sorry, I dropped my English now.
No, that's okay.
No, that's all right.
Was it Montessori education?
Yes, but that is about my school years, and my early youth. But from this, I may go over to the world outside, outside school, and my home was visited by people from different kinds of the world, above all from England, but also from Germany. And when the First War broke out, some of friends came from Germany, and they were filled of German arguments, and others came from England, and they were filled with English arguments, and they quarreled. And I asked myself, how can it be that these kind friends of ours begin to hate each other? No, yes, it is, and already then it was I had the possibility to follow this problem a little bit because my father was a Swedish, he was born in England, but was a Swedish subject and married to a Swedish, my mother was a Swedish girl. And he was mainly working in Sweden in the industries and active Swedish näringsliv was that economic life. And but when the war came, he tried to bring together a meeting between leaders among the German businessmen, and English businessmen. He knew them personally, and he wanted to bring them together to begin to discuss how to stop this idiotic process going on. And the result was that he was excluded from England. So he wasn't allowed to go back to England during the war. And that was above all very, yes, it was a demonstration of even the most, he was altogether pro-England or pro-Europe. So I got that impression to myself. I said, what is the reason that people can begin to behave like this? And one of the reasons must be that we don't know each other's countries and each other's histories. Mm-hmm. That is, we don't know them. When I went to university, I chose history as my first subject, English as my second, because then I could, and geography as the third. Mm-hmm. That depended upon personal relations, and so I took my, and when I studied history, I chose my field to study for special studies, which we had if we wanted to get a top mark. Had to make a paper on that, and I chose Bismarck. Mm-hmm. And in history that was 50 years earlier, and that was the nearest I could come the present conditions then. And so I studied Bismarck and his policy. And in geography I took as a special theme the geopolitics of the Pacific Ocean, yes, which was of interest after the Versailles peace, and a Swedish geographer and historian, his name was Rudolf Kjellén. Yes. He wrote a book on staten som livsform, the state as a way of organizing life, or and he wrote very interesting things about that, and the country was the body of a living organism. The king or the president and he was the head, and ordinary people were what do you call the blodkroppar?
The corpuscles and veins.
Yes. We were, and that's very funny, because Haushofer
Yes.
was
Taught by him.
yes, he was got his
From Schiller.
ideas very much from Friedrich, and Rudolf Hess
Yes.
was Haushofer's assistant,
Yes.
and so the thoughts there.
What years were they?
Pardon?
What years can you
What?
remember?
What?
It was while you were a student that you read
No,
that.
yes, that was in Uppsala. I must have 1925, I believe. 1925, I think it was. And but then I went in for teaching,
Yes.
and then I had I took my what you call it, magister, that's
Teaching diploma.
teaching
Yeah.
diploma in 1927, and I went up to the arbetsförmedling, that is the
Employment agents.
yes, employment organization, and said to them that I have fine high marks in history, in geography, and English. Can you is there a place where I can get a living? And I got the answer, this is typical, I got the answer that, yes, if there are two before you with that combination, no, there are two jobs with that teacher combination in the Swedish system of education. And 127
Applicants.
applicants for the two places. So he said, you had better go back to Uppsala and study literature and linguistics. Then I could become a teacher in the Swedish system. But I didn't have any money for that, and I had like most Swedish, my father, when he died, the family was bankrupt, and I had to borrow my money, and I didn't dare to borrow any more. It was just what that was the general way of Swedish youngsters then. They borrowed money and paid it back after slowly after 10, 20, 30 years or so. They were free then. But I didn't dare to borrow any. But then my own interest in pedagogics
Education.
and my visits during at Bedale School in England and St. Christopher School outside London. I had visited them and I knew them, and so I happened to come together with and then I had another elder sister who was a Montessori teacher,
Yes.
and that was new. It was new, and my father had actually taken interest in education always and had listened to Montessori, so he was interested. He's a very peculiar businessman, you see. So through my sister I came in contact, and my brothers, elder brothers too, with Carl Malmsten. A famous designer. He was becoming he got his fame when the town hall in Stockholm was built, and there was a competition among for the furniture in the town hall, and he won the first prize and the second prize. he was a famous man, and he remained a famous man. But he had also the same dislike of schools where boys and girls listen, were passive, and he was just starting a new experiment school, and I joined him and worked together with him for 6 years. The 3 last years as headmaster of the school, which he started. This was the ideas we had, were taken up 20 years later by the official schools in Sweden. It's very, very funny to look at 10 or 20 years afterwards. So, but then I was far away from it, because one day, it was in 1933 or something like that. Yes, I got on in collision with Malmsten. What do you call it? Collided. Conflict.
Yeah.
A conflict with Carl Malmsten, because he wanted one thing and I began to know what I wanted. You see, and so I could have stayed as a teacher in the Olof school, but I said no, that is not my job, and that was a blessing in disguise, because I didn't have, and I don't have, interests enough for individuals. I am interested in ideas. That is evidently so. And even if I am never happier than when I see a happy child, I could not have been happy as a teacher. And so I was pushed out in the wilderness again. But that was not so bad, because Alman, and there my career as a geographer began. I was 30 years of age then, and I had seen enough of life to see the possibilities and the needs of geography, and on top of that, I had a brother who was a town planner. My eldest brother was a town planner, and he became a very well-known town planner. I listened very much to his ideas about planning a town and planning, and so Haig in America came with his New York investigation, which was mainly centered not on town planning, but on
regional economic.
Yes, regional economics and yes, but his ideas were caught. They were caught by Hans Ahlman, who was a new professor in Stockholm, and he started an investigation of Stockholm. I had been prepared on such work before, because as a student I was a pupil of Sten de Geer. And Sten de Geer, he is probably the most important person in my philosophy, because he he was considered a first-rate idiot by old-fashioned, no, by historians and psychologists and so, and he even, am I too long
No,
now?
no.
And he even sent out his students to map the shop windows in Stockholm and where he was, and he was an idiot, absolutely.
And you continued the idiocy.
Yes, yes. You see, he taught me very much of, first, not to be afraid of making myself ridiculous. That's that's a very, very good weapon in life, to be yes.
Not be afraid.
But
Not to be afraid to make a mistake.
no, to be laughed at. Yeah, to be laughed at too. Yes, that's what you. But I have. Oh, that's all right. And then, already at that time, I made a plan for my work. I can say that my work as a geographer began when I was just over 30 years. And already then I made a plan. I had the experience for town planning through my brother, and the ideas of Sten de Geers. And so I said, I knew the necessity of a good planning. And so I made a plan during the first years, and to begin with my hometown Stockholm, the shopping streets. From that over to the office, different kinds of offices. From that to the population in manufacturing, and then to the housing. And so, when I knew Stockholm thoroughly, I had learned very much on the function of localization. And so I said, all right, now I'll take Stockholm. After that, I shall try to take Stockholm contra Sweden. After that, Swedish provinces, and after that, I'll go over to Europe and see what is possible to get an overview of Europe, and after that, a general population and the world. That was the plan I sketched by then. And so...
you set about completing step by step. You took it step by step.
Yes, of course it was. And usually such plans do not show themselves realistic. And my plan lacked realism in one respect, that it was a too wide and large plan for me to
accomplish.
What do you call it? To
accomplish.
Yes, accomplish. Yes, but that was another thing. Then.
Well, I'd like to come back to the Stockholm later, but first, I'd like to get into this world interest, which was obviously there in your childhood, but which I think you developed through maps. You felt that one way to describe this large-scale reality was to make good maps of it, whether it be world population or projections from different angles and so on. Would you like to talk about?
You think that I have been working much with maps.
Yes. From the beginning, Sten de Geer got you mapping detail on the streets. Do you think that your creative later work in mapping could be traced to de Geer's influence?
Yes. Yes, of course. Sten de Geer, he made a very famous population map of Sweden.
Yes.
And I accepted that at once. But I only made maps to get an idea of what I'm working with.
Yes.
Because I must visualize for myself what it is I'm working with. I was not particularly interested in maps, but I had to create maps in order to approach the big problems. I couldn't take the world into my room, and I had to find some way of making a miniature model, that is the map. But I always worked with the maps as instruments for answering questions.
Yes.
You were hinting at something else.
No, that's quite okay. I think it's better we move back to the Stockholm story.
Yes,
and right after your dissertation on Stockholm, which was a very innovative study in many ways, you were asked to do some work on population projections and other aspects of the future of Stockholm.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about that?
Yes.
A bit?
Yes. This has to do with happy moments in my career as a scientist, if I may use that very solemn expression and a word, because I had found, when I was working with Stockholm, and actually I've been working with Stockholm for 4 years, and then I saw, excuse me, what was your how did you formulate your question?
The Stockholm population for predictions for Stockholm.
Yes, predictions, yes. I said to myself, I can't predict anything, but the town wanted a population prediction. They wanted to have that, and population predictions were usually made by extrapolating population curves. And I said to myself that that's not my job. I have to calculate the development if I shall get anything worth having, and so when I had made my dissertations, we had a very gay and kind of dinner after that. Don't you know what you have? Yes, no, it was a magnificent way of using alcohol. So and then that after I had been I had to invite all interested persons for a dinner, and then I was satisfied with the result of the discussion. We had been discussing for 4 hours or something like that, so
they wanted a study. They wanted the study of Stockholm.
yes,
Yes.
no, my chief contact in there was the head of the statistical office in Stockholm, and he and Alman came to me and asked me. No, they disappeared during at 2 o'clock in the morning or something, when we are all tipsy.
Yes.
And they disappeared, and he and Wahlund and William-Olsson, who was one of the strongest men in the Stadsfullmäktige of Stockholm, they disappeared. Alman took them out aside, and afterward they came, what do you want to do now? And then I said, I want to continue this these perspectives over all Sweden. Mm-hmm. And then they said, yes, they suggested that I made a prognosis for Stockholm, population prognosis. And I wasn't at all interested in making a prognosis because I thought that was... but I could make... it gave me an opportunity to investigate the interplay between Stockholm and the rest of Sweden. Mm-hmm. And that was what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And you may call it a prognosis or whatever you want. The main thing is I get... And so I was... told them, just at that dinner, when we were tipsy all of us, yes. You see. And so a few days afterwards, I was asked by the head of the Stockholm Statistical Office if I was willing to make a prognosis of Stockholm, have a department at the Statistical Office of. And of course I took that opportunity. And so I told them that I can't tell anything about the future, but I can investigate what factors there are behind the growth of a city. Mm-hmm. And that I'll be happy to do. And so they made a position for, would you say, a position at the Statistical Office of Stockholm. And Wahlund, that way, he was a professor of statistics. He was my head or my chief, what do you call it?
Boss.
Boss. He was my boss, yes. And so I made them. I worked 2 years in them to find out the function of Stockholm. The function of Stockholm was what and from knowledge of the function of the city, I made forecasts, a number of forecasts. Most people looked at the forecasts and nothing else, but I looked at what was behind, you see. And so I came to the questions of the inter-collaboration in a city, what do we do, and so on, and how do we organize and localize ourselves in different. And so I came to I went on. I knew where they were already. This was after my dissertation. So this was I went out to all Sweden, and made population curves, and there I had a capable statistician, as that was one of the villkor, the prerequisites, which I must have a statistician and who can handle all statistical material and work together with me. And he did so, and my job was to say what parts of his different factors, statistical factors, how they depended on each other, and so on. And so I made the population prognosis.
That was for about 800,000 population, something like that, within the Stockholm area.
Yes, about 800,000 then, yes.
By 1980, that was what you calculated would be so.
What?
By the year 1980,
yes,
your prognosis suggested there would be about 800,000. Isn't that
yes,
correct?
800,000 to 900,000.
Yes.
Between 800,000 and 900,000, and it was 1,200,000. 1960. It had grown with 50%, but much more than I had. My forecast was. It was much more, and that took down my courage. Of course, I was so awfully wrong to in 20 years. I was fed up with that kind of job. I said, that's not the job for scientists. And now look here, shall we go on that, on the prognosis theme a little longer? Is actual today. Because I gave up then.
Yes.
And first, in 1860, I returned to the problem of prognosis, of making prognoses. And then I had left all that kind of geography to the business economists, and they told us that Stockholm should grow very rapidly to 2.5 million in 1880. That was their result, but then I took out my and saw what was wrong with my own prognosis. Between 800,000 and 900,000, and it was actually 1,200,000, and that's a pretty bad. But then I analyzed my prognosis from 1941 and found that I had accepted the official numbers for Sweden by Wicksell. You know him. Yes. Wicksell. He was our greatest expert then, and I said I'll accept his prognosis on the population of Sweden. That was I had to accept. And then I had said, when I made my prognosis, provided I had made provisions, you see, that we don't get a war and such things, and then I analyzed my first result in afterhand and found that I had come to the result that Stockholm will contain 20.2% of the population of Sweden, or something like that. And that was what we had. The relation between Sweden's population and Stockholm's population was the same, you see. And that depended upon two facts which I didn't calculate with. I reserved myself for such things, but we had the immigrants, a great number of immigrants, and then the baby boom.
Yes.
And they too explained the figure of my prognosis. And then I said, my thought was correct. But Wicksell and the World War had cheated our calculations, but I had made a reservation of for war and such things, but I made the prognosis. So from the beginning, I didn't want to make a prognosis. I had to make a prognosis. Then I made it as Stockholm as a part of the rest of Sweden, and then I came to the same percentage as it actually got. And why did it grow so much? That was because of the immigration, which we didn't have counted with. We counted with the possibility, but it was out of. And the
baby boom.
But baby boom, yes. And but then I had a very hard way to come back in Stockholm, and they planned Stockholm for 2 million people now. And I said that's wrong; it's impossible. But at last they had to admit that it was so. But you asked about what did you get an answer?
Yes, that's just fine. Now, when you look back on that Stockholm story,
Yes.
from the time of your involvement until today,
Yes.
what are the kinds of big lessons that it teaches?
It teaches.
What lessons can be learned from that experience?
From my experience here
Yes.
on urban development and
The geographer's involvement in urban development.
yes, it is if you have knowledge enough, we can, and if provided a certain paradigm, not among geographers, but among concerning the political's view on the development. Then it is not so difficult to make predictions, but then you must know what you are, the prerequisites for it. I am more optimistic now than I was when I made the prognosis, because of my experience. I was wrong, but that was not my fault. It was other extra the external
Yes.
things that happened, which we of course never can guard us for.
Yes, of course. Now there's one final question that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. It's something we have discussed before and you have written to me about. It's the whole question of human creativity.
Human creativity.
Yes.
Yes.
You have some thoughts on that?
Yes, I have. And the only thing I can, human creativity applied to scientific problems or in general, it's
Both.
both. Human creativity.
You can confine it to geography or science if you like.
I confine
Yes.
it to geography and science. It depends upon, first of all, upon the willingness to see reality, and not to have a wishful thinking when you look at when you make your observations. Then we take the scientific creativity in geography. I have never experienced myself as creative.
Uh-huh.
No, not at all. It's nonsense. No, yes, it is so. But I know one thing, and that is that I scorn, or I believe, let's say that the problem is to see things as they are, to see them and observe them as they are. And as far as geography goes, I think that we are the geographers in general are far too ready to make generalizations. And if we take geography now, geographers have destroyed or are destroying their reputation if they follow the lead of economists. Mm-hmm. Our job is to observe the real world and to rinse the economists' ways of solving questions from their
abstract.
What?
Abstract.
What?
Abstract.
Yes, yes, yeah, from their abstraction of everything. The economists working with locational problems, for instance, they make statistical means and trends, but they don't have the techniques of turning their flat abstract surfaces into reality. That's our job as geographers, is to introduce the real surface and the real conditions, and rinse their conclusions with regard to that. That's my and I believe my opinion is that far too many geographers are trying to imitate the economists, and when they don't follow Darwin's recipe, you say that?
Yes.
When they find that a theory is contradicted by reality, I never stick to it, they said, you see. And is it finished now?
Yes, just about. Yes.
It's out now, yes.
Yes. I want to thank you so much for today. I think I have tired you, but at least we have a little of the story here for all your friends around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.